Hey, everybody. So today is episode number 20, and I'm really excited because it's just another chapter in this podcast, and God's done amazing things through this, and I'm excited. I'm just blessed because you guys are listening and communicating, and I'm getting good feedback, and I'm getting some good constructive criticism, which I need. I need that stuff. So I want to say that if you would email underthecloudpodcast at gmail.com. I have it on Facebook, and a new thing about Facebook, just in the last month or so with Facebook, if you'll go to the Facebook page and you'll like the page of Under the Cloud Podcast, you can actually listen to the podcast on Facebook. So you don't have to download iTunes, you don't have to download Spotify or pay for premiums and all that kind of stuff. But if you have those, you can listen to them there. But this gives you the opportunity to just listen on Facebook because most people really have Facebook already. So I want to say thank you for that. So today's episode is with Micheal Maddox. Micheal is a friend of mine from church, and he's a great guy. He's an awesome dude. And we had a great conversation about music, from worship music in church to secular music and what role it should play in the life of a Christian. And to be honest, we did it in just over an hour, and then we stood out in the driveway at my house and talked for another hour and realized, man, there's so much more we could have talked about. So maybe we'll get in here and get some feedback from you guys, some questions, and hop in there and make another episode about that. Because really, we just scratched the surface. We barely even scratched it. So I'm excited because we're doing what I feel God is leading us to, and then there's so many things coming, and it's just exciting. So I guess that's it. We can get into the episode now. So without any further ado, enjoy the episode.
You're listening to the Under the Cloud podcast.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's pray. Lord, we love you. We thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to come together. And like always, Lord, to talk about you, to talk about your kingdom, and just to have a conversation about your word and your works and what it is you're doing in our life. Lord, I thank you for all that you do. And bless this conversation and bless those that are listening. And thank you for all that you do. In Jesus' name, amen. So today I have Micheal Maddox. Is it OX or UX?
OX.
OX, okay. Greg Maddox was UX.
That's right.
Okay, and that's the way I first learned how to spell it. But Micheal Maddox is a friend of mine from church, and again, like I said, for a while, it's going to be all the guys I can rope in it from church to come and do this. But what's awesome is we go to a good church, and there's a lot of people, a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts, a lot of conversations to have that we have in a parking lot, but now I can record them.
That's right.
So if you have been following since the beginning, the first probably 15 episodes was all recorded using Michael's microphones and cables and microphone stands, and then we had an opportunity to purchase our own stuff, and I was glad to give it back to him because that meant we're growing. So thank you, by the way, if I never thanked you before, for letting me use all that.
I was glad it happened.
Sure, SM58s were awesome. And I'm using these cheaper 48s now, and I can feel like if you rub it, you can hear the difference. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they're all in the youth room now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So Micheal is, at our church, is on Sunday mornings, you play on the stage for worship for the main sanctuary. And on Wednesday nights, you do the worship for the youth, teenagers, and preteens. Are they in there as well?
Preteens are, yes.
Preteens, yep. And so you get to do a lot of music playing.
Oh, yeah.
And you enjoy that.
Very much.
Yeah. So have you always played music, or is it just?
For a very long time now, since I probably started playing with people when I was about 14. Started learned it fast. and started playing in bars almost immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of music did you start playing?
Rock and roll, Muscle Shoals stuff. Leonard Skinner, Ted Nugent, and classic rock thing. That's
So
kinda what I
mostly
was
guitar
doing.
though, right?
Oh yeah, that was me. I didn't start singing until I was fully grown.
Yeah. So as soon as you figure out chords and you start playing what you're listening to, probably what you're hearing mostly, and then that's the way most bands are. You get into those groups and either what you're listening to or what your buddies are listening to, or you can start a band. That's always the number one thing.
That's right. I had a friend who is an amazing guitar player, and at the time he was an amazing guitar player for a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And
Who, Chris or
no, my friend Adam. He's been a professional musician. He's kind of a semi-professional musician now.
Because I heard Chris is really good too.
Chris is really well. Chris came up with us playing.
Oh, okay.
We met him about the same time, and I became friends with this guy, and his dad played music, and his dad is a mentor of mine, and has been. He's been a major father figure in my life, and he had a band and played music. And it was just awesome seeing these guys just rock, hit those big notes, play guitar, and he was the singer of that band, my friend's dad. So that went down to my friend. We'd go over there on Saturday nights, and they'd all be jamming, and we'd sit in the room with them, unplugged most of the time, just chugging along.
Teenagers playing along with the adults.
Oh yeah, and then
one day you accidentally plug it in, and they're like, "Ooh, yeah, you're good."
slowly started taking us in, and I was learning things from both of them, and we kind of all played the same stuff, and
yeah,
it took off from there, playing rock and roll and honky tonk music, stuff like that mainly.
So I bought a guitar from a guy on my ship when I was in the Navy. I guess he decided he was done with it, and it was a Fender acoustic guitar. It came with a case, and it had a really high action on it. It was really hard to press down those, and so you really earn your pads on your fingers with those. And I'm sorry, guys, if we start talking musical stuff. I apologize if we get too carried away and I don't give enough details, or what that means. But with that guitar, you really earn your pads. And I had a guy that lived in my apartment complex who was always sitting in his garage playing guitar all the time. Big blues guy, loved playing blues and stuff like that. And one day I just said, "Hey, I just bought a guitar. You want to help me learn?" And he goes, "Yeah, bring it. Like, go get it right now." The plan was for us to me go over there and say, "Hey, when would be a good time?" And to him, it was right then. And so I went and got it, and I started playing with him. And he told me the important thing is to find a song that you like and learn it. And so the first song I ever played that I learned from scratch, from beginning to end, was "Wish You Were Here" by Pink Floyd. And it was and then it was a Leonard Skinner song, "All I Can Do Is Write About It." So those are the two songs. And then he goes, "Okay, you got those. Let's go play them at a bar, a little open mic night." And I was scared to death, I'd sang in church. I'd sung in front of 1,000 people, and in choir and stuff like that. Do a solo in front of the Fine Arts Center, in front of everybody. But to sit in front of 30 people who were musicians on open mic night, it was exhilarating. It was a blast. I was like, yeah, I'm doing this, So, and that's really all I ever did with it, just playing and, doing a little bit here and there. So I didn't graduate to that musician. I always I look at the guitars in the bedroom when I walk by them, and I'm like, man, I need to pick them up, but I don't. I don't spend the time dedicated to it as I should. But then again, I'm not on the praise team, so it would just be learning it for learning it. But
yeah.
So I mean, you grew up playing guitar for your adolescence, and then on into your church world. Through the bars into the world or church world, which is very common.
Really?
And it is if most people aren't playing guitar and learning heavy riffs playing Stephen Curtis Chapman.
You're right.
They're learning playing, Metallica and such as that. They're learning those heavy riffs, and then those transcend in the church, and you'll hear it. When people are playing, what kind of background they have. Because how you learn music inspires you to learn, and it will actually impact the way you play forever, because you can hear when somebody's a metalhead or whether they're a blues person. Even if they're playing at church, you can kind of hear it,
Yeah.
So I've always enjoyed your playing because you started at our church playing just a lead. No, yeah, just playing a lead guitar, right? Yeah.
Well, I started playing bass there, filling in on the bass, and one day the guy that was kind of leading worship said, "Hey, tomorrow, bring your amp. You're gonna play with us." And I did, and that was all there was to it. I don't know if he asked anybody or not, but I'm glad I got to go because he knew I played guitar, and I was kind of just filling in on bass, just helping out any way I could. And I'm really happy he done that for me.
Yeah, I'm glad he did too.
Yeah.
And now you're one of the main people in front singing and playing music and stuff. And I've always enjoyed. See, as somebody who understands music a little bit and understands playing a little bit, I can listen to even some of the great guitar players and hear when they mess up, but they just keep going. But before I started playing, I never heard that, never noticed they never mess up. They're perfect, or they would start over. But no, they just keep going, But so I can hear how much time you put into it.
Yeah. That goes back to that my mentor friend that I was talking about, the old man. He we'd all be playing together, and when you mess up or something confusing comes along or someone goes the wrong part, as a teenager, as a young man playing, you stop. You get deer in the headlights. Yeah. Everybody does it. You see people learning music, and everybody does it. And he would call you out immediately. Did I say stop? And he pointed at everybody. Did you say stop? Did he say stop? Nobody said stop. Why'd you stop? We learn fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't stop.
Yeah, don't stop. So, and it still transfers over now. I mess up a lot. I mess up every time I play, but I just keep going.
I know you said a few weeks ago that you practice a lot.
I do.
How much time do you put into your practice? What's your regiment? What do you try for? What are you aiming for anyway?
So, when I get a set list from church, if I get one for main service on Sundays, it's usually starting Thursday evening. It's at least an hour every evening on guitar parts and at least an hour on my vocal parts. Yeah. Just trying to learn those. I have to. I'm not naturally gifted, and I'm not a very good at just making things up. So I have to practice these parts for sure, and I like to know what key they're in and all. So I spend at least an hour on guitar and an hour on singing pretty much every evening from Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Did y'all get the song list on Wednesday night? What you're most likely, subject to change, but you get the song list
hopefully,
on.
Yeah. And I used to do a little more than that for main service, but now since I'm in the youth, I have to come up with what we're going to play there, do all the organization. So immediately following church Sunday, and a lot of times on church Sunday, I'm getting ideas, write them all down. Sunday night, I start practicing for that, and that's just acoustic playing and singing, which is a lot of singing, which I'm not a singer, and I never have been, and I kind of have fell into the role there. So it takes a lot of practice for me to do that. So every evening, Sunday evening, Monday evening, Tuesday evening, I'm practicing for an hour or two, singing and playing my songs and arranging those songs in a manner to where our kind of compressed youth worship group can play it through easily.
Yeah, you're not just solo. You have youth that's helping you.
That's right, and it goes extremely well. They fall into it. We play new songs every week, and they hear them about 30 minutes before we play them. Maybe they've heard them on the radio, maybe not. Yeah. But their first time playing them is usually 30 minutes before we play them, and they do so well just falling in there to it.
So my oldest two kids, actually my oldest three, are there on Wednesday nights for that. And I asked Peyton last night, who's my oldest, how's it go? Is it good? And she said, yeah, it's good. She said she enjoys it, which is great because it means that she's hearing that from peers. Even though you're up there,
yeah,
there's her peers there doing the same thing. And I as a father of a teenager, I appreciate that.
That's great.
When I was in high school, our youth group consisted of me and another girl.
Nice.
And then when we started dating and we broke up, it just was pretty much ended that youth group, But so I'm glad that there's our churches of the size that one, we have a youth group, and two, we have enough youth in there that can actually play music and enjoy worship. And it's not just, and I'm sure I know you well enough to know that you're not up there just singing and playing. You're up there in worship.
That's right.
It's not just a show, and I appreciate that too, because I can see that on Sunday mornings, and you do something that a lot of people might not catch, and if when you're listening to a song out of a major church, and I use the name major church as one that actually produces a lot of the music that you would listen to on K-Love and such as that, or produces the songs and such, and without saying names, which is irrelevant, don't really matter, but take Bethel, for example. Bethel has a lot of music, Jesus culture, such as that. I mean, there's a ton of great spontaneous, to me, there's a lot of great music. I know some people don't like it. But the arrangement in it is insane. If you were to watch how many guitar players there are, there's one that's doing like ding, 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 the whole song.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so faint in the song, you don't realize there's a man or a woman standing there with a guitar just making that little ding, ding, ding. And it adds so much to it. And then I've started noticing that that's what you do at our church. You're adding those little, because Mr. Ross, who's a fantastic guitar player, who's an amazing guitar player, he's over there doing his thing, and you just add this little deal, and you shake your finger a little bit, and it just adds this little thing to it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary, but it's there, and it's awesome, and it's great. And it makes it what you're used to hearing, too, so it's not like it's different.
That's right. Layers, I think, are very important.
Okay, layers. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, that's what it is. You just layer up all those sounds on there. I like pads, which is that ambient kind of synth sound. If I can do that, I'll do them. And usually what I do is I find out any big song we play that people are used to hearing on the radio, I like to do the main riffs of the song. If there's something, God's Not Dead, for example, it has a very distinct opening. Yeah, everybody knows that. That's heard the song. So I want that in there.
Yeah.
But there may be a little too much going on for me to sing and do that.
Right.
Or there may be that sound you're looking for, maybe actually being made by two players stacking up on top of each other. And there's another feature to that is a lot of times that is two different guitar players playing two different kind of leads in the song that I think I can hear distinctly. So usually what I do is I find out what every guitar player is doing, and I usually kind of morph them into some kind of devolved combination of both of them.
Yeah. So what fits your church? What fits your worship service? Because if you got up there, if you had every component that a big church has, if you had every person that could pull it off, and you made it about, hey, let's do it exactly like it was written.
Yeah.
Let's do it that way. Then it takes away from the anointing side of it, because it makes it more of about, it makes it more about the show and not the spirit.
Production.
Yeah.
Well, and my views on that have changed significantly. And
see, we're not even in what we were planning on talking about.
Yeah.
But no, that's what. Hey, let the spirit lead it, and so that makes better podcast.
Very quickly, mine changed. There's a church that I very much admire, a local church, and they do that awesomely. They put on a great thing, and they have their own sound.
You talking about a good show or a good spirit?
Both.
Okay.
They
do both.
They're sincere and they are amazing at their show. And listening to them before, they have their own sound.
Yeah.
And I've also seen them do almost note for note record, and it was a pre-recording with that. It's on your pads program, and some of the extra instruments just come through the PA, and it sounded just like the album, and they lost me right there. They're on that song. I mean, these guys are still amazing, and I've heard a few other churches do that where they play any parts they're missing just through the PA on a click track that's recorded, and it loses me. It's like, okay, something left
You're trying
here.
too hard.
Well, it's just, I guess, the overproduction, and maybe, like you say, focusing too much on just the sound. I don't know what it is, but I heard that live, and I said, "Ooh, I was wrong. We don't need every part." I said, "Our kind of mashed up bunch of musicians creates our sound, and that's very important. I value that a lot more than I first did when I first started doing worship teams, because I found myself more and more trying to emulate what I was hearing, and I'm very satisfied now mixing up my own thing. And I was even using presets on the guitar that were made specifically for those songs, modeled after the musician that made them. And I swapped from that too. I've got kind of like how I grew up playing. I've got my own sound now that I use that's sort of unique to me.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear that in every song that I play now. I like the band aspect of it, the kind of raw side of it. I suppose.
But when we were having this conversation, I was actually having this conversation with Matt Baird the other day at our church about. First, I walked up to him, was asking him about what tuning he had on his guitar, and he just had a half step down. The whole thing was just a half step down. So E flat, that's all it was. And because he was holding some weird chords, and I was like, he was holding them in like it almost like a C shape, but he was working it all the way up and down. And you may have to teach me how to do that.
Well, I went home and tried to copy him, tried to rip him off on Here Again. And I was watching what he was doing, and it wasn't adding.
I'm not the only one watching his hands.
I said he's tuned different.
I knew he had to be, because I figured he had some kind of open tuning because of the way that he held that same like C9 shape the entire way up the neck and back down. But then I was talking to him, and I asked him about it, and he said that he's not a musician. He just makes it work. For him, is singing, and the same with me. Singing's number one, music or instruments is number two. But what we talked about was how. Did you know that on Saturday night he performed somewhere in Missouri, and then he was in our church in Southwest Louisiana on Sunday morning? So Saturday night to Sunday morning.
I didn't know that he did that last time. I know that.
And so he was talking about his voice and stuff, and what I was bringing up, and this comes back to my Pentecostal Church of God upbringing, is the step out in the anointing is to say that, is to be like, okay, we're about to do this. Here's what we've prepared, but right now, Holy Spirit, you're welcome here. Take this guitar, take this microphone. This is yours. We're here for you. We're here for that. And when you make mistakes under that anointing, nobody's really cares because everybody's in worship. Everybody's in a mindset of worship. And I think that's important because, it's funny because like there's the story or the account to make Mr. Phil happy. There's the account in the Bible that talks about that they were, instead of going into battle, they sent the worshipers first. And when they sent the worshipers first, then the enemies started attacking each other, and they didn't even have to go to battle because they sent worship first. And I think that's the model as to why we have worship prior to the word. Roy Connor is a very well-respected, amazing man of God back home. I would go to him all the time, and when I was learning and getting in ministry, and I'd ask him questions. But one day I heard him say that worship softens your skin and softens your spirit so that the sword of the word can cut you better. And if you go straight into the word, you can still be cut by the sword of the word. But you know how like when you wash dishes and your hands are in that water for a long time, surfers had that problem when their feet are so saturated with water that the bottom of the fin on the board can cut their foot just real easy, step on coral real easy. But if you just get out there, it's not that way. So the worship mentality takes you into that place so that when you're there for the word, then you can be cut by the word. And I love that. It makes sense. And also one day noticed that worship, I can't say it now, I'm thinking about it. And worship, WARSHIP, is like a Navy, you have a warship. And one day that just hit me. And like, it's a battle. Worship is a battle. Going into that mindset, you're lifting up God, and there's so many different variables. People don't like that song. People don't like who wrote that song. Who cares who wrote that song?
Yeah.
Or that song sounds too much like this one, or that song sounds too much like the world. But, in and of itself is We're here for God. And if it happens to sound like somebody on the radio that's not Christian, but we're here in God, and as long as the motives are right and the mindset behind the song is right. And there are some Christian songs that I don't really care for.
Yeah.
There's a bunch, actually. I don't really like them.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of hymns that I don't care for. If you really want to get into that too, there's a lot of them that I don't think they should be in the hymn book. They're not centered toward God, And I know there's songs that are sung at church that are the same way. In today's modern church, there's a lot of songs that are probably sung that are just singing because they make people happy, not because their mind's in the right spot of worship.
Oh yeah, it happens a lot. We do it. We do it with some of those songs, and it's really just to kind of, most of the time it's used to set the pace for the rest of the service, I suppose, because there's one or two that are based off of a biblical aspect or a biblical mindset or even a Christian mindset that don't really do any glorification, I suppose. And it's you could say they're for entertainment if you want to look at it that way, or you could say it's for just an emotional boost if you want to look at it that way. I know some people think that, and it's really most of the time just to set the pace. Hey, let's get going, let's get clapping, so that we can get into this worship, right. Get a little more comfortable with what we're about to be doing. Because the whole aspect of it, the whole point we're there is to worship, and a lot of times you have to make people comfortable. I mean, that's all there is to it. Not everybody sitting there is a seasoned Christian. A lot of people just come out of the world. Some of them just come out of the bar last night.
Yeah, there may be their first time ever in church.
That's right. And whether some people think it's right or not, we think about them too, right. And we're going to say, this is what we're doing here. We're clapping. Some people are doing more than that, and it's okay to express yourself if you feel like that is worship to God,
Yeah. So do you, I'm going to ask this question, and I know this is a loaded question, but some people may not even know this happens. How do you feel about guitar players? It's a trend now of sliding in like Star Wars. Have you seen that?
I have.
What's your feeling now?
I don't mind it so much. It falls kind of like what I was saying before. I don't know that there's any direct. And it is loaded. It's tricky, and it's like any non worshipful song. Basically, you're given that talent by God. It comes from God. Everything. God created music. God created everything.
Right.
So, in a way, I'm doing this. This is glorifying, but I don't really think there's a place for it in the worship set, honestly. But I can't say can't say I'm going to get mad at someone for doing it. I'm going to laugh if I'm sitting out there and I hear somebody do it, and honestly, I think it would break the ice with some people. Right. Really, yeah. I think my wife would really like to hear that in a worship set, And the thing about it is there's a lot of things we're doing that are just breaking the ice, that are just making people comfortable. And that, but I think that's fine. I think it's fine to make people comfortable, to put in familiar things because we haven't changed our goal. We haven't changed the fact that we're here to worship God. It's all, if you're considering worship, then I think it is.
So I agree. I think that it's neat, but it can. Where's your focus at? Yeah. Why are you up there? Are you up there to entertain? Or are you up there for God? And sometimes I think that if you're up there and you just slide it in once to be funny and that's it, that's one thing. But it can get a little over. I guess. Out of hand sometimes and stuff.
Oh, it could. And
it happens in the black churches too. They'll add, and especially and I say black churches because I hate saying that, but it's true with their music. They'll add stuff, especially like drum riffs and stuff in it. You'll hear it on YouTube and such stuff. They'll add songs and, songs that honestly, I don't know because I don't follow certain styles of music. But they'll add it in there, and then and they'll turn around and laugh, and they'll keep playing. It's kind of funny, but I think there's a time for it and there's a time not for it. But.
Yeah, I feel the same way about like any guitar soloing kind of as far as
that was another question.
Everything. I didn't mean to get ahead of you, but everything stopping. The whole movement stopping just to showcase this guitar thing. I kind of feel the same way. I get asked to do it a lot more than I do it, and I usually just kind of brush it off because I don't have any set viewpoint on that, but right. I don't feel right about it. To be honest with you, there's a few things that the feature really fits in. Right. But it's not going to be a 3-minute blister and solo. Right. It would not be that.
That's something, honestly, that okay. So to use the word contemporary, I don't know if Jesus culture would be considered contemporary, but probably because you have like Southern gospel music, you have hymn music, and you have like what the charismatic church in the 70s and 60s, 70s, 80s. They had what was referred to as chorus music, which is just like what's that song? It just popped in my head. It went away. Anyway, there's just like little lines. And it's like back when it was an overhead projector and they were putting it on the screen, they could put the entire song as like a Bible verse or whatever, and everybody was singing it. And it was just, it's not a hymn, but it's not a contemporary. It's just, anyway, total word just left my head. It's like a chorus or something. Okay. And it fits. And there's some of them are amazing. And in worship even, and they fit because God's anointed it, and but then you have like you just talking about the solos, you have the traditional or the K-Love songs now, or I use K-Love because it's a national thing, everybody knows it, and you have a verse, a chorus, a bridge, and then back into your chorus a couple times or whatever. However, most songs are in that regard. Now, secular music, especially like with heavy metal and rock and stuff, the stuff that we were talking about growing up, Van Halen, Pantera, and all that stuff. When they're in the bridge, it's guitar solo time. It's Dimebag Darrell doing his thing. It's these guys doing their thing, playing guitar, shredding it, having a great time, and then it goes back into the chorus. Well, when you're in church, I have felt that before this. I have felt this like, where do I stand on the solo? Is it about the solo? Is it about the deal? Now, this is exactly one of the two reasons that the Mennonite church does not play music. Because one reason is that New Testament never mentions music whatsoever. So, by default, they don't mention it. We're not mentioning it. Two, it's about pride. And it's about showcasing like that, making it about me, making it about, look at my piano playing, look at my this and this. And which the same thing can be done with vocals. The same thing can be done with vocals. But when you talk to a Mennonite, a lot of times they'll give you that reason. Because what are you up there for? Are you up there for the guitar solo for you? Well, hey, God gave me the ability. He gave me 4 fingers on my left hand and the thumb to push back on it so I can play these scales. He's the one that gave the guy the ability to put 88 piano strings, pick 6 of them, put them on a guitar, and make a guitar. Think about that.
Oh, yeah.
Who come up with that? How many combinations did that take? God was behind that too, I believe. Like you said earlier, God created music too. So you run into that. You run into that debate. When is the solo? Because you're not going to hear do a drum solo in the middle of worship.
Yeah.
But then here's a guitar solo. And a lot of times though, and I'm at our church. A lot of times when you hear the solos, it's during breath break.
Yeah.
It's when you're...
Oh, yeah.
And then Mr. Ross back there and playing like a maniac, playing amazing. But while he's doing that, you can see everybody getting their breath back because they've just been singing so hard, and you have to, and people don't think about that, the breath break, like you have to breathe or you'll fall down.
That's right too. And I like it as a layer a lot. I like and that is I've messed us up on stage before like that, in conjunction with others, where like you say, here it feels like this needs some guitar stuff right here. I can feel it. It needs to happen, as a player or whatever has happened. It's now this needs to be in there, and here I go playing it, and then everybody stopped singing. But I just wanted to play it underneath everything.
Underneath it, yeah.
And here it becomes a feature all of a sudden. It's like, okay, I wasn't aiming for that, but whatever. That has happened a lot too, you know, and that was I think just out of, you know, respect or friendship. They think, okay, he's wanting to do something. So I stopped. It's like, no, I was just trying to add to what you were doing. That's really all I was doing.
Yeah. And so when you were off to the stage right and over there by yourself in the dark,
yeah,
because it was kind of dark.
Oh yeah,
and you had all your pedals and stuff, and there was a microphone there, but you wasn't really singing. You were just so focused on playing. You would do a lot of that later stuff. You were stuck, and it worked great.
Oh yeah.
And then now that you're up front in the middle, you got your pedals, and you're down there looking at your pedals and pushing pedals and stuff, which I enjoy. I enjoy it so much, and because you're a great guitar player, and your heart's in it for the right spot. But is it distracting to you sometimes? Is it too much? That could probably be the best way.
No, not right now. It could be. I've simplified it very much, and it come from, you know, I was up there with the acoustic for a while.
Oh yeah, Martin.
Yeah, and someone asked me. I mean, somebody that I very highly value his opinion, and he has a very big say so in the church. He asked me, can you go back to playing electric and doing some of those fills and pads and stuff? Because I feel like we're missing that. That's what he told me. And I felt the same way, just because I think I have an ear for music. And I said, yeah, I wish I could. And he said, I really wish you would. And so do that. You know, do that tomorrow, I think he said. So okay. I started doing that. And I simplified my rig. It's just basically just a 2-button thing now, just back and forth. One's just louder than the other, essentially. So it's not that big of a deal. And as far as the neck goes and playing, I can play it blindfolded in the dark, whatever need to be. I know that just fine. For what I do, I keep my stuff relatively simple, and I don't step out of my comfort zone a whole lot playing, especially not on stage. I want to be ready to go with what, and I stick to what I know. So I'm not having any issues concentrating on anything I'm doing on the guitar. I have issues concentrating on my singing just because I'm not a trained singer. And you find in church you don't get a lot of even outside of church, I don't get a lot of criticism for my singing, and I welcome it very much because I want to know what I'm doing.
I've given you feedback.
You've given me more than anybody else in my life has ever given me, and I like that.
It ain't bad, is it?
Well, no, it's a good thing.
Because I noticed that you were trying, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but you said I noticed that you were doing those fills or those layers while you were singing.
Yeah,
and that was like it wasn't working, and you was like missing it. Like pick one, you know, sing it or fill it. And when that's what awesome thing about our setup is you have other singers leading, and then you can fill in there. You know, you do your layers there, but it's really hard. It's really hard to play the bass and sing at the same time. It is. I mean, I know people do it. Sting from the Police did it, and people do it. But it's really hard to do lead and lead the song.
Well, what would be messing me up with that?
What's his name from Megadeth?
Dave Mustaine.
Dave Mustaine. He's a freak.
Oh,
he can do both. It's like, how do you do that?
Well, what messes me up with that is it isn't the guitar, and I guess having the guitar would contribute to it, but hitting the notes while I'm singing.
Yeah.
I don't hit the right notes a lot, but when I'm hitting the right note on the guitar, it's blatant that I'm not hitting the right note singing, and I can hear the pitch between the two of them. So it takes my mind to oops and a worry state and panic almost. I've got to get back on track with my voice here, and
well, just do like that guy told you. Just keep going.
I always keep going if I can.
Because if you ever stop, he'll be the day he visits, and he'll be like, "What? Who told you to stop?"
Yeah, I would. If I ever stop, it's only because I'm basically crying and I can't keep myself together. I've done that before, you know. Right. But as far as
you do great, man. You do great, and the band is great. I mean, if it's a band or our worship team's great. Yeah. Russ is a fantastic drummer, and I really wish he had real drums, but that it works, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a good setup, you know. It's a good deal, and so part of the reason I wanted you to come over and to talk was, and I was hoping we'd get to that part, so we started there. Okay, there we are. So when I started talking about doing the podcast and I started hammering ideas out, being that me and you are musical type people, I came to you with a topic, and this is a year and a half ago probably. I came to you with a topic, and you told me your answer off the bat. And then I asked you a few months ago, and you kind of said, and that's changed a little bit. Like your answers changed a little bit. And the question is, and this is a very important question, is it okay for Christians to listen to non-Christian music or secular music? Secular music being, right, just, really Loretta Lynn, Metallica, Nelly, Michael Jackson. I'm just thinking some people. Is it okay to listen to Ray Charles? Is it okay to listen? I mean, anything that's not Christian music, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings. Is it okay for Christians to listen to music that's not Christian? And so I was kind of hoping to talk about that a little bit, but listen, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
What do you think? I know there's this is going to start an argument, but not between us. But
there's so much to it. And I can be the hard head guy, the technical guy, and I can start off and I'll say, is there a such thing as secular music? Even though I know what you're talking about. Right. I know exactly what you're talking about. But really, music is just math. It's chords, it's notes, it's timing. All music is math. And it was like everything, it was created. So music in itself just isn't secular. And
so you're coming from the perspective of all music comes from the fact that God created it, so there's no...
That's a great way to put... That is a great way for me. Well, that's what's in my mind and my heart. Yeah. I think, just
I had a guy working with me one time that said there's no such thing as Christian music, only Christian lyrics.
Well, that's a good point.
And he's an atheist. That was the craziest thing, but it was so brilliant.
Well, that's technically right. There's not a Christian chord and there's not a Christian note.
The Jesus.
yeah, maybe, yeah.
Sorry,
maybe so.
Musician
maybe
joke. Mm-hmm.
Band nerd thing. But I mean, all things glorify God. All of creation glorifies God, even music. Now, that was the hard-headed answer. The whole that at the core, I can keep that in mind with whatever I'm listening to, with whatever painting I'm looking at, with whatever show I'm watching. This was created by someone who glorifies God. Well, I mean, was it created by a sinner? Well, all Christian music was created by sinners too, as well, all the way back to the Psalms. Now, getting into what I understand about secular music, and I know what you're saying by artists who aren't proprietary Christian artists, I think it's fine. But just like anything, there are definite limits to that in my mind.
Right.
In my own personal, I'm not going to listen to anything blasphemous. Right. And I would at one time. I mean, at one time I thought it was awesome. And that was it was all about shock value. At a certain point in my life, I wanted the hardest death metal I could find.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was
Morbid Angel and stuff like that.
No, way worse than that. Way worse.
Lamb
than
of
that.
God. Oh, by the way, Lamb of God is not a good band, so don't ever buy that for your kids. Okay,
I could see the mistake.
It happens all the time. I think they did that on purpose.
Bands you wouldn't hear. You wouldn't
Norwegian
hear of
bands and such. Yeah.
Oh man, and bands that were blatantly blasphemous or glorified death a lot or demonic things, and I can say this from a standpoint of I was just I would say a dumb kid, to where I thought that was cool, and I made music like that, just thinking I didn't have any ill feelings towards God. I had a pretty good life as for a American poor kid growing up, Yeah. I had shoes and food and all that. I didn't have anything against God, but if something was shocking, whether it was blasphemous or whether it was just about death and stuff like that, there's I won't name any of those bands and those songs, but those things just appealed just because of the shock value. There was a guy, because he came out about this, Tom Araya from Slayer, which is a heavy band, but not near as heavy as a lot of the stuff I listen to.
They're very
he had a song called "God Hates Us All," and someone confronted him about that one time, and he shook it off. He laughed. He said, God doesn't hate man. And he just laughed and walked off. Well,
but why make that song?
There's two sides to it. Yeah, I understand as a dumb kid, he's just doing it for shock value, and he's getting sales, and it was just a neat riff. But and the other side of that, there's a lot of kids listening to that and saying, "Oh, God hates us all," and believing, and maybe even crafting some of their worldview around that.
Right.
And that gets to where my whole view on secular music is the same view I have on drinking. If you can't sip a fine bourbon that a man has spent years crafting into something peculiar and specific and amazing without getting drunk and acting a fool, you don't need to be sipping on bourbon. And if you're going to be listening to music that has a negative worldview and changing your worldviews around it, you don't need to be listening to that music. You need to know your limits. I had a buddy that he was a recovering drug addict, and this was before I got in the church. And he taught every night. He was doing something with the church, kind of like we did for a while. Honestly, it seemed like every night something was going on. He was doing that every night. He had a Bible study, a men's group, a private study. He had church, and I got to know this guy, and I got to learn if he got out of church at all, he was back on dope, and that was how he was. So he had to be there. He had to be in the church. He had to be surrounded by those people. One step out, he was gone.
Yeah.
For a while, he'd break off. He'd borrow money from you and disappear and everything. And you have to know your limits. And if you don't know your limits, maybe don't step out there.
Right.
And I don't see anything wrong with secular music as a whole at all. Like I say, that I have my I don't listen to anything blasphemous. That's obvious. I don't listen to anything about death. I don't like that. It turns my stomach now. And used to, I thought that was cool, but something has changed in me to where I don't want that around me. And
when you're talking about like,
well, there's a band I used to like a lot called 6 Feet Under, and all their stuff was death metal. It was about killing people and terrible things, and I won't listen to them. And I grew up. They shaped some of my playing, and I won't listen to them anymore. And there's a lot of bands like that I won't. So I do listen to quite a bit of country music these days, and there's some of that rock from my past I still listen to and will listen to,
So in high school, we was going to Faith Baptist Church in Franklin, North Carolina, and we had at that church they had Wednesday nights. They had Sunday morning, Sunday night preaching, and on Wednesday nights was just class. Like it was basically another Sunday school, but it was just they broke us up by boys and girls and by ages. So there was a lot of teachers. It took a lot of teachers to pull that off, but it was a much much smaller church, and 150 on Sunday mornings was a big service. And so, so one night we were walking into class and Korn had just released its Life is Peachy album. And so we're doing the whole twist, so we're all like kind of doing our stupid high school teenage thing. And the teacher of the class, who's an amazing man and has impacted my life, even without realizing it, his name is Steve Stewart. He said that we shouldn't be listening to that because it's not godly. Now, if you don't know who Korn is, he's probably right. Korn was a really rough, especially the first album was like, it's very morbid. I mean, he writes about what he went through, and it sucks. His life was horrible, but he made music, made millions of dollars, and then Brian Welch wound up coming out and doing his own Christian stuff, which is amazing, man of God. For that, or that God pulled him out of that, which is awesome. But anyway, so the conversation that night turned into why, and whatever the lesson was thrown away, and we spent the night talking about music and why we shouldn't listen to this, shouldn't listen to that. And one of the boys said, well, how come it's okay for you to listen to Conway Twitty, but it's not okay for me to listen to Metallica, right?
Yeah.
And his response was that Conway Twitty sings Amazing Grace on the Grand Ole Opry. Yeah. And he's true, he's right. And so you're talking, your perspective goes to the metal. Your perspective, when I asked you this question, you went to metal first.
Yeah.
And which is fine. That's your genre of music. It was mine. I loved Megadeth, Metallica. I followed Pantera for a while. I've seen them 3 times in live, and back when they was still Pantera, you know, it was a long time ago. And I even took Christina one night to this concert that had so many different Slayer, Pantera, Morbid Angel, Static X, and there's another local band. It was like this huge, you know, we spent all day there. And it didn't fill me, but it filled my ears, you know, but it didn't fulfill me. Yeah. But so anyway, so I understand why you would say that, hey, that's not good. However, when it comes to country, it was always tolerated where I'm from because Loretta Lynn would sing Amazing Grace on the Grand Ole Opry, or Dolly Parton would, or even the new people would sing it. And then this kid who was a teenager, who was probably 14, 15 years old, said, how come it's okay to sing about, you know, picking up a girl at a bar and saying, I can tell you've never been this far before, a womp, womp, womp. And then the next song is Then Sings My Soul, which anybody who's listening to country music can immediately hear Conway Twitty singing How Great Thou Art, because he did it a lot.
Yeah.
And so which is that? Is that a lukewarm message that you're giving out? That, hey, you can pick this girl up at a bar and you can take her home and check her for ticks, as the one song said. Take her out in the woods and check her for ticks, you know, air quotes. But the last song on the album is How Great Thou Art, and it makes it okay.
Yeah, I see where you're getting
and to
at.
me, that's more dangerous than Iron Maiden.
I don't think so. Well,
because at least Iron Maiden, you know, they don't believe in God. You know they don't. You know where they stand.
And that's the thing. I think it's about the same music wise. So the reason people do that, the reason people put those songs on there, you know,
you're talking about the Christian songs at the end.
At the end, Cody Johnson does it a lot now. He's the guy right now in country music. Well, it's just to let you know where they stand, and the reason for that is it's sad, really. And I went down this road. It's because of I think there's a cowardice that we get into as Christians. We're not supposed to be cowards at all, but we get into depravity very badly as Christians. So we think that any band, like we listen to Iron Maiden, there's this consensus. There's this thought, this depraved thought, that they're trying to put a demon in your house. And they're not. They're just guys playing music. I was in their shoes before. They just think this is cool. Yeah. Whether there's bands out there that do that, I don't know. But these people that put these albums out that have these gospel songs, they know that too. They're trying to tell you, I'm a Christian. It's okay. Listen to this music. And they don't see that their worldview they're putting there as far as the lifestyle of drinking and all that. They don't really see that because of their Christian beliefs. I'm sure they think it's fine. They think as long as I'm maybe not getting drunk and all this, they probably think it's fine. Just like we rationalize any bit of sin in our life, or as long as you're not going extreme. We have this depravity that thinks anything that isn't a Christian artist is trying to hurt us, and most of the time it isn't true. I don't know of any case where for a fact it is true. I know there's lots of legends about that.
Yeah, but play the records backwards. Yeah.
I know there's tons of legends, and the most believable one is honestly probably Led Zeppelin, because Jimmy Page did some questionable things, but I don't know that they were trying to do that, and I don't think they were. Well,
it's the difference between what their motives were versus what our enemies' motives are.
Oh yeah,
and just because Jimmy Page got up there and did his little, you know, like demonic thing that people always say, oh, Jimmy Page did this little thing. And like I wrote this down right here. Styx, right? The band Styx is Tyx. They have some amazing songs and everybody knows them and stuff. But the word Styx is named, supposedly, and the first time I was told this, Kenny Jones told me that.
And River in Hell?
There's a river in hell called Styx, and they named it that. And I've read through the whole Bible. I've never seen that. Yeah. And I've never read that, and I've never read it in our scriptures. However, unfortunately, at first I dismissed it because, hey, it's not in the Bible. What are you doing? But then the more I got thinking about it, is that they knew that someone thinks that.
Yeah.
And they're willing to do that. And whether it's their intent or whether it was, hey, I want to do this, and you can come off saying that I'm just doing this for the fun of it. But the impact of that weapon of music is massive.
Oh, it can be.
And when you say God hates us all, for example.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When, like you said, for him, it was just a joke.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe. We don't know. We just
It was
trusted him.
very lighthearted for him.
Yeah,
He didn't
for
think,
him,
he didn't think anything into it.
Now, the impact that it has is the question at hand. Is the music bad, or is what could come of it, like with your friend?
Yeah.
That's the question. And I probably should stop for a second and say that whoever's listening needs to really pray about where their line is. Draw your line. If you can handle bluegrass music, right? There's some bad bluegrass music. If you start listening to it, there's some lyrics in there that are not like, wait, this isn't godly, but it's because my papa listened to it. It must be okay. But I mean, there was horrible things in the 1920s too, and 1930s. So we're not going to say, well, because it's from then that it's automatically okay. But I also don't want to go what you were talking about is to go to the other extreme and say allow everything.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the intent. Well, the intent is irrelevant. What is relevant is the intent of the enemy that's using that weapon. That's my mindset.
I see.
That's where I'm thinking.
I see.
And so for me, I have said ever since high school, even though I wasn't living right after high school in the Navy and all that, I've said that the worst music is a lukewarm music. And the worst music that I can think of, realistically, is country music. Because it does give out that lukewarm message. At least with the Outlaws, it was the Outlaws, like outlaw country is outlaw country. But there's bands that have Christian artists come and sing 2 or 3 Christian songs in the middle of their deal and then go right back into the stuff. Like, what message is that? Is it? And I don't want to be the holiness person that's hard-nosed to say that you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
However, we have to know, we have to be very cautious of the attacks, the schemes of the evil one, as the Bible says.
Well, I see, and
that's my thinking.
Oh yeah, I mean, I understand that. The thing about it is these guys, number one, most of these bands and these people started out as kids. I mean,
right.
either really young kids or just, kind of like I was, a teenager who was a kid. And
very few of them get put together as adults.
Oh yeah, and then get famous and never really grew up. So I don't know how Styx got their name, but I've been in the band naming process hundreds of times, I think, and you wouldn't believe the things that get thrown out there, and then things that get. I was in a band called Ex and Ferris, which means from below, which we meant was from hell. That was the guy's intent. I didn't know that at the time, but it was just a neat Latin name or something, and he named it, and me and the other guitar players said, we don't care, we're just making music.
Yeah.
And we literally said, because this guy was a nerd, this guy's a big nerd, and he named the band, we thought he was a nerd, he actually was a cool guy, but he named it.
There's cool nerds.
Well, now I'm into a lot of the same things he was, and me and my friend played with people older than us all the time. I mean, when we were 16 and 17, we were playing with 35, 37-year-olds, and to us, a guy that really liked Star Wars and comic books and all that, at that age, we didn't think we thought we'd be growing up out of that by that time. He had the same interest as us, so it was like, okay, this guy's a nerd, and he came up with this name. I was like, we don't care, we're just playing music, and we're making money, and we're having a good time. But and looking back on that guy didn't have any ill things about it. He just thought it was intimidating and cool and metal. So a lot of times this stuff is just happening by kids throwing around stuff. Whether what their intent is, who knows? But most of the time, I can vouch that they mean nothing by it.
Right.
And like you said, whether the enemy's using that or not, that's up for question.
Because he can use anything.
Absolutely.
He's not just using Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven.
Well, how is he using, you think depraved Christians who think everybody's out to give them a demon or to lead them away from God, that isn't singing a hymn. they may be turning people in the opposite direction. I don't want to go to church with somebody like, that's what at least what somebody says. I don't want to go to church with somebody that's a Bible thumper and doesn't want me to listen to anything. Who knows? The thing with country music, most of these guys are singing about a worldview, and for poor American kids, it
fits their worldview.
Familiar. These are things that happen that we did, and I generally do stay away from anything glorifying a sin, even if it is country music. But worldviews are very important in music. They can help you empathize with people. I don't really listen to rap, but I have empathized with people only through music. I can't be in their shoes, but I've seen a point of their life. What Tupac said, I see no changes. Wake up in the morning and I ask myself, is life worth living? Should I blast myself? I'm tired of being poor, and even worse, I'm black. My stomach hurts, so I'm looking for a purse to snatch. I never thought about it. I'd never seen it from those eyes. I just see people stealing on TV. This guy got arrested for stealing. He's a thug. Dude's starving,
Yeah.
And I don't see. I've never
doesn't justify it, but it makes you empathize.
I've never been in that position, but I can empathize with this guy nowadays. Now that I have a lot more empathy for people,
right?
I can see that and kind of make my heart hurt a little bit. And there's lots of songs. There's songs about abortion and such things, which I'm so against. Some songs put you into a worldview to empathize, to say, well, I'm glad I don't have to make that choice. It's about as far as I can go with it. Country music's the same way. They're singing their worldview. To me, it appeals. That's how I grew up and such. And it's appealing to their singers. And with those extra songs in there, those Christian songs, they almost have to do that nowadays to let people know, okay, I'm not trying to hurt you, my music.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of Christians that only listen to Christian music because of that reason. They won't listen to anything that isn't Christian music because they think somebody's trying to hurt them. And my thoughts on that is, where's the line? Am I not supposed to look at this painting because an atheist painted it? Am I not supposed to listen to Mozart right now? What would the world be if we didn't have some of these amazing painters and musicians? I know a lot of them did come out of the Renaissance and were trying to glorify God, but a lot of them didn't. Where do I draw the line? Do I not watch baseball anymore? Do I not watch football? No, I'm not going to draw that line. I'm going to say I understand creation enough to, I know everything in some way or another does glorify God, and some way is going to be put to his use. I mean, he can use anything the way he wants to. So to draw that line in music, no, I'm not. I don't do that. I don't think that. And I got down that road for a little while. I went down that road of honest depravity for a little while. I went so far. I do that with. I've done that with the news before, thinking that anybody on the opposite political side from me is really trying to wreck my life and wreck me. I have to back off sometimes. I have to step away from the news. I have to step away from some of these thoughts that thinking, somebody put it in my head one time that anyone that wasn't on a Christian music label was working for the devil, and they had this big battle, against it. That's not true. It's simply not true. And so I'm not gonna draw that line, and I'm not gonna let myself be steeped in this cowardice, depravity. And I wasn't called to be a coward. I was called to be strong. Jesus didn't call us to be a coward. They didn't send 500 Roman soldiers to arrest a rabbi because he was a coward, and they didn't crucify him because he was boring. Yeah. He was a very strong man and a very powerful man, and same way, I'm not going to be a coward and say everything's out to get me. I know my line. I have an idea of my lines, and I'm not going to cross into anything that would make. I'm not gonna cross in anything that would make me go a path I would think would be leading towards sin. And
sometimes, so I wanted to say that when I first in 2007, was it 7? Yeah, 2007, when I first decided that I was living for Jesus, and I started preaching, I started all that stuff. I had all these CDs and stuff that just, a lot of them were just garbage and should never be listened to. And so I just got rid of everything, threw it all away. I didn't give them away, because I felt like if I can't be listening to it, why would I give it to somebody else to listen to? And so, I even thought later that I wish I would have like put them all on a piece of rebar and like melted them together so I could say, "Hey, look what I gave up," you know. But I realized that wasn't godly, and so I didn't listen. And for me, and I know this is another part of the conversation, but for me, there was a lot of people that I was so musically driven that like anytime I was in the car, I had music on, truck, I had music on. And that was before Spotify and all that stuff was in my ears.
Yeah.
Now it's even crazier because it's easy to put Spotify, build your own playlist and listen to whatever, you know. And which I'm a huge fan of Spotify. And you can listen to this podcast on Spotify. And so but you can listen to that and have all that music at your hand. But when I was working in Singer, I was in there with the metal shop. Not metal, but metal, making metal. And I wasn't trying to be an overbearing Christian. And so what I did was I would listen to Christian music one day, and the next day I'd relinquish the reins to the other guy and let him play what he wanted to. I wasn't trying to be overbearing, make him so we took turns and we'd listen. So 3 days, 1 week was Christian music, another 3 days. And so then I was like, man, there's got to be some, and I already kind of knew because when I was so bored listening to Southern gospel music all the time, and I didn't want to listen to Jesus culture all the time. I wanted something that was kind of familiar, but also in a worship mind, and which is hard to find that. And I found this band called Red, and there's a Christian band, and then Skillet, and then all these other ones. And so I started listening to them, and then Head Welch, Brian from Korn, he put a record out, which I didn't care for, but I bought it, you know, because I was so excited to hear his story, and he had a great story, has a great testimony. And so I started doing all that. But when I was in Singer and I was listening to metal, you know, like we had to be careful what we were listening to because there's customers coming in all the time. But all of a sudden, and this is not his fault, this is my fault. All of a sudden, within like 3 or 4 months, all 5 days was metal.
Yeah.
And at first it turned into Christian metal. And there was one, he goes, they're trying to sound like Pantera. I'm like, that band's older than Pantera. And he goes, what? Like, you know, but it was just crazy. Like, and I caught myself sliding away a little bit in my focus because of music. Yeah. So I needed to know where my boundary was. Yeah. And I thought,
is that because of music or because of you and your lines?
Yeah,
you know?
that's my line. And that was it. And so, that's why we're having the question. Yeah. Is it okay for Christians to listen to secular music? I think that there are songs out there that should not be listened to by anybody.
Yeah, me too.
And there's there's some bad songs out there. But there's songs out there that are great. Is it okay? So there's this guy from the 30s, 40s, 50s, I don't know, jazz named Duke Wellington, plays a clarinet. If you've never heard of Duke Wellington, listen to it. It's jazz. There's no singing. So is that okay? Can I listen to that? Because there's no vocals. It's all music. And to me, I love instrumental music like that, especially stuff that I can't play that I know I'll never be able to play. I have a playlist on my phone of bluegrass instrumentals. And it's just probably 10 songs. And every now and then I'll just put it on and listen to it. Yeah. Like songs that I know, hey, I'll never be able to do that.
You know what they say about jazz is a jazz musician, he'll play 1,000 chords to 3 people, and a pop musician will play 3 chords to 1,000 people. In the same manner that can be said. You know, what's he trying to do with these chords and with this music? And there's not even any words there. He's not trying to do anything except show off. Yeah, you know,
because the musician's brain is about it's different. If you've never played an instrument, you don't understand the gravity of trying to perform. And there's a performance thing, and you enjoy, even if you mess up, when people walk up afterwards and say, hey, listen, if you're listening to this and your musicians at church are really good, make sure you let them know it, because it's a huge encouragement when they're they're practicing and they're doing all this stuff, and they're, you know, we want to be able to keep them motivated.
Man, as someone who is honestly just slightly artistic myself, I'm more of a of the math side of music. I mean, I have struggled and worked to learn everything music I have. I'm not a natural musician. Never was. I've worked for it. To meet somebody who is an artist, who is a true musician and an artist, just the slight artist in me, I can see the beauty. It is so beautiful. The guy that he used to play with at church, he was an artist. You can see, I mean, he comes up with things so naturally that just make it beautiful, whatever you're doing.
And wrote songs. And
writes beautiful songs. And the guy I come up playing guitar with, he's an artist. I mean, he can focus on both sides, but he is naturally an artist who is very intelligent. So he's a wonderful artist. And the things they come up with are so beautiful. I mean, it is in itself glorifying God. Whether they want to admit it or not, what God had created is amazing and beautiful to look at in these guys. And it can be, as far as the secular thing, like I say, music itself isn't secular. What's the difference between Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and Sing a Rain on a Roof on a Summer Night Where I Still Know Wrong from Right, Sing a Song About the Heartland, Sing a Song About My Life? Both the same level of wholesome goodness. Is that one's a country singer.
Yeah.
There isn't.
One's the country singer.
One is you're right about that. There isn't anything essentially secular about music. Some people I'm sure will try to make it that way or divide the line. Any of those lines are kind of distasteful to me, honestly. I think, we're called to love our God with all of our heart, all of our soul, and love our neighbor as our own. And a lot of this music helps you very much empathize and get in your neighbor's mindset in a way that you're not going to, and you're not going to hear about their life in any other way, and the lifestyle some of these people live in any other way than listening to their music. So
can we conclude? Because it's been an hour.
Okay.
You said, I can't talk for an hour.
Yeah. You're right.
So can we conclude with the notion that Paul says that be all things to all people, but also if your brother stumbles about eating meat, don't eat meat around him. Don't cause your brother to stumble. And so if there are people listening who refuses to listen to anything that's not Southern gospel, or there's people, we didn't even get into the idea of Christian rock and rap and stuff that people cannot stand. Well, we didn't even get into that, which we could have a totally different episode about that. But if you don't like it, or let's say sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so does not like, pick a band, whatever, country music, rock, whatever.
I'm not going to play it around them.
I think it's important for us to say, hey, okay, that's where you're at. That's who you are. That's where you are. And that's where your convictions are. And if that's where your convictions are, it's my responsibility to not cause you to stumble. And that's what Paul says is, cause not your brother to stumble. And so it's on me if I know it and I do it anyway, then there's a problem there. And that's when, then it falls on me differently, and so for me, I look at some of the great music. And when I say great music, I'm talking secular music, listening to some of the great songs of the 70s, 60s, 70s and such, especially like from before my time. I remember listening to, there's a song, Elizabeth Reed, In Memory of Elizabeth Reed by Allman Brothers. It's just instrumental. And just the depth and all that to that. One thing I wanted to say real fast, and I'll let you close it out, but is I truly believe, and this is my belief, and it's hard to really back it in scripture, but this is my feelings, right? That God gave every actor, actress, musician, artist, everybody, God poured those talents into them, and they were hijacked and commandeered from the worldview, their sin nature hijacked those and have used those in an ungodly way. I don't believe that the devil gives Robert Johnson the ability to play the guitar. You know, the whole crossroads
Oh,
story. I don't believe the devil gave him soul. I don't believe Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil in the crossroads of Clarksdale, Mississippi, and had the ability to. I mean, that's a huge story.
Yeah.
You know, like it's
Legendary.
folklore. Yeah. That's the whole 27 Club. The Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
Kind of hit on that. I don't believe that he sold his soul to the devil there. However, I do believe that he had a God-given talent that was taken. It was hijacked by the sin nature and was used in a way outside of glorifying God. So when I see Brian Welch from Korn, when I see Dennis DeYoung from Styx, or Freddie Mercury, the singers, the people who can just make this music and it's so amazing. It goes to what you said. God created them. God created their talents. It just got kind of hijacked sometimes. And some of that stuff, I'm gonna leave it up to them, whoever's listening, to decide whether. I keep bumping the table. I told you not to do that, and I'm doing it. I'm gonna leave it up to the listeners to say it's your discretion. It's on you. And now, have a set of rules for your children. Have the same set of rules for you.
Oh yeah.
Don't be a hypocrite in that. You know, I listen. I mean, I guarantee if I open up Spotify, the one band will be the Allman Brothers, and the one underneath it will probably be Led Zeppelin, because I listen to them every now and then. But you know, be careful. Be aware of where your heart is. Be aware of where your spirit is.
And
be aware of
where it's heading as well.
Keep your focus on God.
Oh yeah.
And some of that stuff will go away. You'll find yourself not wanting to listen to it because your focus is on God.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, there's things that a lot of people consider pretty innocent. I don't listen to, and I think it's a conviction.
Yeah,
I think it's a conviction. You have to know your limits. You may have to learn your limits.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
right.
you know, some have spent a long time learning that.
True. You're absolutely right about that.
I encourage people to get into music, to learn to play. And if you're trying to learn to play with others. That you are very much depriving yourself if you're not playing with people. As soon as you start playing guitar, try to find somebody to play with. You'll learn twice as fast, and you learn twice as much as well.
Yeah, and play with people who are better than you. That's the thing.
All the time.
It's like playing golf. You play with people who are better than you, and you'll learn more. You know.
Yeah, that's why I play there. Everybody else is better than me.
Well, because you ain't played with me yet. That's why. So, do you mind to close us out in prayer?
Oh, absolutely. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with my friend. I thank you for this opportunity to share some views, Lord. I pray that everything said here was of you, Lord. I pray that as I go on, Lord, it'll all be of you. Father, I thank you for my friend, and I thank you for the people listening. In Jesus' holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you